Welcome back, Vinyl Community. Kicking it in a dubwise style and fashion today. Special Spotlight edition. Echo and reverb. Vocals floating in and out of the mix. And the emphasis on drum and bass overall. Can only be dub. Dub is a style of reggae, an aspect of reggae that developed in the late 1960s and many years after would go on to be hugely influential internationally, influencing other genres like techno, dubstep, grime, all kinds of international music forms. But it began in Jamaica as a remix of a pre-recorded track. Initially, the very earliest dubs were basically straight instrumentals, no real added production techniques done. Later on, they became more complex as the echo and the reverb came in. But basically, at its essence, dub is a remix focused on the drum and bass aspect of a pre-recorded piece of music. Dub is often mentioned by record collectors, music fans, even those not necessarily well-versed or interested in all the different aspects of Jamaican music. Kind of puzzles me to some extent. Personally, dub doesn't make much sense to me outside of its context as a reinterpretation of a pre-recorded track of its source material. But its origins can be traced to the late 1960s in Jamaica as sound systems proliferated on the island. Beginning in the 1940s, 1950s, began to get more competitive. Each producer, each sound system owner racing for exclusive material to play on their sets that would make people want to come and listen to them. Also, the music had shifted from ska to rock steady by the mid-60s, and it's in the rock steady era that the origins of dub truly began. There were some early experiments with using the studio as another instrument, as another aspect of production, with engineer Linford Anderson, aka Andy Capp's experiments with a tune called Papa Top. Also working with Lee Scratch Perry on his early reggae tune People Funny Boy, which added baby crying sound effects to it. All aspects of using the studio as just another aspect of a recorded piece of music, which would be a hallmark of dub. In the late 1960s, a sound system owner called Rudolph "Ruddy" Redwood, who operated a sound called SRS, or Supreme Ruler of Sound. He would come on and play his set around midnight. He would call himself Mr. Midnight when he would get up on the mic. He went to Duke Reid's Treasure Isle studio to commission some exclusive acetate discs, sometimes also called dubs. These were discs with exclusive mixes of tunes. It was kind of a sideline of the studios. Exclusive mixes for play on the sound systems, not really intended to be commercially available to the public, but intended to be for sound system use to attract customers to the dance, get people excited, having a good time, cause a buzz in the dance, and cause more crowds to want to go to that sound's dances. Now, the engineer at that time, Byron Smith, inadvertently was mixing a cut of the Paragons on the Beach track when he inadvertently left out the vocals, leaving a straight instrumental track. It was apparently a mistake. Rudolph "Ruddy" Redwood heard this, thought they were onto something here, decided to keep that mix, went to a dance, dropped the Paragons on the Beach, the standard vocal on one record player, and then he announced on the mic, "I'm going to turn this place into a studio." Went to a second record player. They had two decks for more easier mixing between tunes, and dropped the instrumental version with the vocals wiped. The crowd recognized the basic rhythm track, and it went over a sensation. Ended up playing it 5 or 6 times that night. Word got back to Duke Reid, owner of the Treasure Isle studio, where this mix had been done, of the effect this was having in the dances. Before you knew it, 45s, Jamaican music, heavily 45 oriented at this time, not so much LPs, which were more of an afterthought. Soon, The 45s had all usually had two different tracks on the A and B sides. Soon they began using these pre-recorded tracks, the instrumental tracks. They could overdub an organ instrumental or a saxophone instrumental and utilize the same rhythm track to fill out the B side of the 45s, or even spin one track off into many different 45s. It was an economic advantage. They could create all these different mixes, and also these instrumental mixes became useful for the DJs or MCs who would get up on the microphone and chat lyrics at the dances to improvise their lyrics over top of the instrumental mixes. One of the greatest was U-Roy, sometimes spelled Hugh Roy, and here he is on a Duke Reed 45 chatting over the Paragon's "Wear You to the Ball" with "The Ball," further instrumental cut by Earl Waya Lindo on the B-side. So two cuts, same rhythm track, same set of musicians. Recording was a cost-saving measure, maximizing profits, spinning one track that you had to get the musicians into the studio to record, and no longer did they have to try and get the artists at the same time. They could cut the music, have the tracks ready to hand, and then just focus on recording the artists to come in and do their lyrics or do their instrumentals, whatever they wanted to do, and spin these off into multiple 45s. So the instrumentals became a standard B-side. Soon after, began being credited as a version, as on this one, and also on Duke Reed label, Duchess. The Mellow Lads, Chatty Chatty Mouth, transforming into Chatty Chatty Version on the B-side. But these are still just basically instrumentals. At this time, Lee Perry was also experimenting with proto-dub, I would say, not really fully considered dub. Albums like Soul Revolution Part 2, Cloak and Dagger, all steps on the ladder to what is considered dub. The first 45 that's considered to have a true dub on the B-side, or sometimes considered, it's a tune by artist Little Roy called Hard Fighter for producer Lloyd Matador Daly, which had a version side called Voodoo on the Flip by the Hippie Boys. The first dub albums began appearing, most sources say, around 1973, 1974. The first LPs, again, Jamaican music, heavily 45 driven at this time. The LPs, and especially the first dub LPs, were pressed in extremely limited quantities. All the ones I have are all later reissues. Good luck finding an original. Some of these have never even been sold on Discogs, or the odd copy that is available. You're looking at hundreds of dollars even for a copy that may have no cover or be in fair or good condition. So very, very rare. Some of these albums were pressed only in a few hundred copies. So 40 years on, very difficult to locate an original early dub album. The album that is first considered by most to be the first true dub album, Aquarius Dub by producer Herman Chin Loy. This is a very recent reissue. Aquarius label, nice red vinyl out of the UK. This has versions of tracks by Dennis Brown, Augustus Pablo, who was discovered by Herman Chin Loy, and again, appeared around late 1973, 1974-ish. There's a lot of variation in sources. Dub especially is one aspect of Jamaican music where there's a lot of contradictory information, contradictory statements. Around the same time as Aquarius Dub appeared, Java Jabba Java appeared from the Randy's Impact camp in Jamaica. Randy's was a record shop and label, also had the Impact label, founded by the Chin family, produced by Clive Chin, and Jabba Jabba was mixed by a young studio engineer by the name of Errol Thompson. Impact. This is a recent reissue through VP. The Chin family later relocated to America and founded the VP Records empire, but started out in Jamaica with the Randy's and Impact label. And this was a very early dub album as well. One of the first, usually considered one of the first 3 to 5 dub LPs that ever hit the market. Mixed by Errol Thompson, who had been hired by the Chin family, totally rewired their studio. He was able to use effects like speeding the track up, running it backwards, adding different effects to it, and these are hallmarks of dub, the dub remixing technique. Further dub set called Randy's Dub would appear, which was reissued by the Blood and Fire label as Forward the Bass. Great dub set, again, hugely limited, apparently only 200 copies of that one released. There is a reissue out. Errol Thompson would leave Randy's, leave the Chin family, and move to producer Joe Gibbs, where he mixed another early dub set called Dub Serial. It's another reissue. Joe Gibbs label. This is through Greensleeves, which is now owned by VP. Dub Serial, very early dub album. Got Sata Masagana version, among others. Lee Perry had been continuing his experiments, and he teamed up with the up-and-coming dub mixer named Osbourne Ruddock to release Blackboard Jungle Dub. Originally came out as Upsetter's 14 dub Blackboard Jungle, again considered one of the very first dub albums. Produced and directed by Lee Perry. This was released in a split stereo mix, and was later, a few years after that, appeared on the Clock Tower label as Blackboard Jungle Dub in a slightly altered form. It's an early pressing here. It's from later in the 1970s, I believe. The classic Blackboard Jungle Dub, Essential Dub from Lee Perry. The first dub album released in the UK was called Pick a Dub by producer Keith Hudson, with input by the Wailers bass player Aston Family Man Barrett and others. Yeah, this is the earliest dub album I have on early pressing vinyl. Got no cover for it, but it appeared on the Mamba label. Pick a Dub. And Pick a Dub and Blackboard Jungle are sometimes considered the first thematically coherent dub albums released, conceived as a LP, as a long-playing statement of form, of a unified and consistent mood and mixing technique. But the man who would go on to have the greatest impact on dub was Osbourne Ruddock. He was an electronics engineer who sometimes went to Duke Reid's Treasure Isle studio to repair equipment, and he had gotten word of the impact those Ruddy Redwood instrumental versions had had. I think producer Bunny Lee had taken him to a dance where he witnessed firsthand the effect on the crowd. He had a sound system of his own called Hometown Hi-Fi that he had started in the late 1950s. It was fairly small sound. He was keen on bringing that up. To further that effect, he hired the DJ U-Roy, the chatter on the mic, the MC, one of the great early DJs, as his main man on the microphone, began upgrading his equipment to include reverb and delay, phase shifters, adding tweeter boxes. He also ran a dub cutting service out of the back of his house, where he would cut those exclusive acetates. As word of his prowess in engineering spread, other producers would be lining up to procure his services, mixing their tracks. And it was only a matter of time before King Tubby began putting out albums under his own name, which appeared as Dub from the Roots. Again, these are all more recent reissues. The Roots of Dub. There's the King at the controls right there. The first, what's considered one of the first 45s that really put his name on the market as the dub remixer, the studio engineer, became almost an artist in their own right, was a tune by singer Larry Marshall called I Admire You for Carlton Patterson's Black and White label, which when remixed, transformed on the B-side, became Watergate Rock, credited by name to King Tubby on the flip. And Larry Marshall considers that as having established King Tubby's name and his legend, which led to further success back with Augustus Pablo and the King Tubby's Meets the Rockers Uptown album. Here appearing on Message label through Shanachie. This appeared around 1976. By this time, King Tubby's name was secured as a legend in the field of dub, and the dub race was on as a proliferation of albums began appearing on the island. So that is my look at the origins of dub. This will be continued in future chapters. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Peace.